What are early signs of an abusive partner? There are a lot of patterns of abuse. Some abusers isolate the people they are with so that they have no one to reach out to. They make the victim rely upon them, and thus the stakes of leaving or speaking out are the loss of the only person you have left. Some abusers make their abuse seem normal, and so they slowly raise the temperature to a boil, ever slowly increasing their worst behavior, and if the victim reacts negatively they lower the heat for a while and spend time acting like it was a one-time thing and they didn't mean anything by it and it won't happen again. But it will of course get worse. There is a pattern of abuse that is sort of like a yo-yo, where a person will do everything for you, make you seem special, bomb you with love, just give you everything you could dream of, and then slip some abuse in and use the love they've blasted you with as leverage. After all I've done for you, you would say, act like my abuse is the problem. Can't you see that I care? If I didn't care I wouldn't have done this, etc. Like family dysfunction, abuses come in a lot of flavors. Sometimes abuse can just be periods of neglect and normalizing a coldness towards the other person and downplaying any of that person's needs. It takes a lot of work to keep a relationship healthy, and even people who are not generally abusive can in combination create a pretty unhealthy situation long term. It is helpful, I think, to consider some of the signs of a stable relationship to know what an unstable one might be. Stable partnerships are two independent people who act with compassion towards their partner, but often not just towards their partner. They have a circle of people they care about. They have friends and family that would vouch for them in a healthy way. Both people in the relationship allow room for the other person to be who they are. There is respect for boundaries. There is consideration for the consequences to their actions. A relationship that can thrive grows at a moderate pace often. It is a small flag if a relationship grows too quickly. Oftentimes a healthy relationship requires both partners to be able to admit having been wrong after some reasonable length of argument or disagreement. They are capable of apologizing and tending to any emotional harm that can happen in an argument. Both people are willing to put work into the health of the relationship and the health of the other, but not generally at a sacrifice of their own, especially at the beginning of relationships. That relation changes a lot, I feel, when people have been together for a very long time. Those are just general things. Not everyone has learned to be good at some of them, but you want to be with someone who is willing to learn how to be those things, willing to put work in on themselves in that way. Not taking no for an answer and pushing boundaries, but acting like they're pushing you as a favor to you and it's for your own good. When everything you do, they always make it sound like nothing important. Downgrading it, belittling, anything of the sort. You're never as good as them, your hobbies or work isn't as hard as theirs, and you feel like you don't matter. If you can't have a mature conversation about the relationship and what you feel you need without being told you are actually the manipulative one, run, because they will try to tell you that you are manipulative to manipulate you into never saying your opinion. Controlling, demeaning, knocks you down, talks badly about everyone in your life, doesn't respect you, it isn't fixable and it will get worse. Talks badly about everyone in your life, yep, and they have strained relationships with the people, few who continue to deal with them actually, in their lives, and they crap talk them too. Gets angry and offended when confronted about their own issues and gaslights you into saying sorry or that it is you who has to do better in the end. Yep, they start by saying you are wrong. When you prove them they're wrong, it's pity parade time. Yeah, you're always right. I'm just so stupid and crappy. You are so much more clever than me. And in a clap, they became the victim. Manipulation. One thing I found with someone's relationship, someone I care about, was that she's with him because she's afraid of what will happen to him if she leaves. So things like, I won't ever find anyone else if you leave me and I'll be depressed, etc, etc. If they are making you feel guilty for leaving, that's not a good relationship. Begins with subtle attempts to control you. They may even make you feel special, as if they really care. The next stage is often less subtle attempts to demean your friends and slowly cut you off from them. Of course, it's cloaked in claims of loving you so much that they want what's best for you and that your friends aren't good enough for you. At first, any attempts to resist are met with played up hurt feelings by the abuser and claims that you don't love them enough. It eventually evolves into verbal and emotional abuse. By the time the physical abuse cycle begins, it's often too late to emotionally extricate yourself from the relationship. Can confirm, I had a GF in the past that did all of this. Whenever I would address how she was acting or call out how she was isolating me, I was made to feel like I was imagining everything and it was my fault. Gaslighted me, really fricked with me. I constantly second guessed myself on everything and in the end everything ended up being my fault. Your feelings don't matter, and no matter what happens, everything is your fault. You're trying to talk about a problem and by the end of the conversation you're the one apologizing. My ex-boyfriend never once uttered the words, "I'm sorry" straightforwardly. If anything, it was always, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Acting extra nice the next day because they know they were wrong, but can't bring themselves to apologize with words. 1. Hates your friends' relatives and will repeatedly make critical comments to isolate you. 2. Picks fights over silly things to test boundaries. 3. Makes out that they're the only one who cares about you to make you rely on them. 4. Repeatedly brings up the favors they've done to get you to comply. 5. Makes promises they never keep, even the little ones, because it makes you look crazy and abusive when you get upset. 6. Subtle criticism of your clothes, body and behavior, so you'll be worn down and have low self-esteem because it makes you more compliant. 7. Gaslighting, so you question your sanity. 8. Controlling the income, stealing money, so you rely on them. 9. Spreading lies to those in your inner and outer circle to isolate you. This isn't an exhaustive list, just some of what I went through before the abuse escalated to sexual and physical abuse. Just remember, sometimes you have to trust your instincts, and sometimes you have to forgive yourself because you won't see the warning signs until it's too late. My ex went so far as to blame a medical condition for him raping me. He never had that condition, it just fit his narrative so he could blame me. If they behave badly towards the people they feel most comfortable with, parents, siblings, close friends, they may be an absolute angel with you now that you're still in the beginning, but when they get comfortable with you too, they'll treat you the same. Lying, blaming you for random things, causing arguments, small acts of violence, physical or mental, threats of violence or name calling etc, limiting contact with family and friends, belittling you or your opinions, saying they're right even if they're not, trying to control what you do or where you go, manipulating, changing emotions fast, like being angry and then trying to make you feel sorry for something or these to name a few, but obviously it depends on the person. Never taking responsibility for their actions. Never letting you educate them on things you actually know about because they think it makes them look stupid. Lying. Especially lying to family members or best friends. This one should be higher up. I worked in the automotive repair maintenance industry for nearly 5 years and somehow his manhood was insulted when I tried to tell him car information. Crap was so infuriating. If you find yourself hiding things about them from other people, or making excuses for them, it's a huge red flag that you are actively ignoring something that is wrong with your relationship. This hit home. The 4 characteristics of a perpetrator are minimizing, "It wasn't that bad," denying, "I didn't do that," blaming, "It's your fault," and playing the victim, "It's me who is suffering more." Dang, this hits close to home. Gaslighting. Somehow, everything is always your fault and never theirs, and they'll beat you so much with their version of the truth, you start to believe it. They will belittle your argument or dismiss it. Not empathizing when you're upset, unable to show they care unless it benefits them, listening to their friends about you, rather than hearing your own words on how you're feeling, showing up wherever you are, even if you didn't tell them where you were going, love bombing when they make a mistake, then repeating the mistake, arguing with you about your feelings when you speak up about their actions, when you stop hanging out with your friends, so long as they were healthy before, insisting they pay for something, but then hold it against you at a later point, educating you on how you should act, their friends not keeping in contact with them, wanting to be exclusive even though you've only known each other for a very short amount of time, then being insecure when you say yes, complaining when you spend time with your friends. Early on in the relationship, sex is more focused on their pleasure, and no aftercare. unsaid expectations and not setting and agreeing on how things should flow in a relationship, such as an unsaid expectation that the woman should always do the laundry. Rushing the pace of the relationship. This would include things like saying I love you very early, moving in together or pushing to within a matter of a few months being together, pushing for marriage in a similarly short amount of time, ignoring small boundaries, and or trying to make you feel bad for having set boundaries, feeling entitled to the bulk of your attention and time, which usually results in guilt or anger being used against you for spending time with others or on other things. All of their exes were horrible people, without exception, according to them, at least. I was trying to keep things at a slow pace for the best of things in the first month of dating my ex-GF. She even told me she wanted to take things slow. After a month she told me out of the blue, if you can't give me the attention I need, I'll get it from someone else. This still haunts me nearly 3 years later, and we broke up about 6 months ago. It's not easy leaving. They start doing everything for you. Seems kind to start with, but is just another way to control you. And it's never their fault. Sometimes it's not obvious, it's slow and subtle. I don't like this friend. And you stop hanging out with people. You get anxious when friends phone you or message you. You wonder what you do is going to set them off. You constantly feel on edge and anxious. You begin to lose yourself of self. But they love you, so it's okay. And true love can work through anything. So you don't want to give up. And you keep going. And eventually it all becomes too much. I took the most informative social psychology class in college. The professor made sure to make repeated points on anything that had to do with manipulations in relationships. He said the biggest worry for any abuser is that the victim will simply leave, so they always manipulate the victim into thinking that this relationship is their best option. On a simple psychological level, if you have no better options, you will always choose to stay. One of the most common ways abusers make you believe that staying is your best option often goes undetected and is quite subtle. But it's little phrases with wording like no one will ever love you as much as I love you or anything along those lines, subtly insinuating that this is the best you will ever have it. It doesn't seem like much, but mix that with tons of repetition and use in times after making a mistake and it really starts to sink in as a fact for the victim without them even realizing it. It could be something like, wow, you messed whatever up really bad. You're lucky I'm with you, to always fix these things to both put the victim down as well as hint there is nowhere else to go. Without this mental trap, abusive relationships would never go on as long as they tend to. Really makes you think differently about the wording of a lot of love songs though. This is a really good answer. I never knew that the biggest worry was the other person in the relationship leaving. Makes a ton of sense. Also, I wonder if deep down abusers are just super insecure bullies who don't feel they deserve love, and so they unconsciously and consciously sabotage it with their behavior, which had to have somehow been learned. Every time I wanted to hang out with a friend, I had to be back at a very specific time, and if I wasn't I was blamed for not wanting to spend time with them cause I was late getting back. Everywhere I went I had to send them a picture, including work. Was guilted into sex when I didn't want it. Constantly moving goalposts. You don't know enough. Read a book. You read a book about it. Wrong book, wrong author. Trying watching a documentary. The documentary is a lie. Try and get some info from someone in that field. You watched a lecture from that professor. You need to attend classes on the subject to understand it. Being incredibly defensive when you bring up an issue. This isn't to say that everyone who does this is abusive, but if you're in a new relationship it's not something you should ignore. A very early sign is not being able to take no for an answer. Romantic persistence is a sign that somebody is not going to be able to respect boundaries. Making you feel like you're in need of therapy when they clearly did something wrong and you get upset. Dad did it to my mom all the time before they divorced. He cheated on her. He later did it to me when I confronted him about how his actions really fricked his kids up. We no longer talk. Therapy is an important tool and helps a lot of people, but don't let someone make you think you're crazy or irrational for having emotions. Sometimes that person is a master manipulator. Oh, and he is a minister, too. Go figure. My abusive ex kept saying I should stop going to therapy because my therapist would talk me into breaking up with him. It turned out that after a couple years of therapy, I ended up talking myself into leaving. My ex very early on showed me who he was. Any type of disagreement we had, he would ball his fists up like he was ready to punch me. Later on he actually told me he wanted to. My ex did this as well. Also said I'd never hit you, until he did. If they hurt you, in an undeniable way, they will often make huge gestures to make up for it. Be overbearingly sorry, until you feel forced to make it okay for them. To tell them everything is fine, and they didn't do anything too bad, and you forgive them, and they're a good person. Even though you were the person who was hurt, they'll make you be the person to make it better. I've been in an abusive relationship previously. For me it was when he started getting overly possessive jealous if I talked to another man. I ignore those warning signs, so please don't ignore them. Never letting you have any time to yourself. At first it seems romantic and fun that they want to see you all the time, but if they won't leave your house for 3 days regardless of the hints you're dropping and won't even leave you alone to shower, then you have a problem. They have no sense of accountability with you, work, their friends, etc. Everything is always someone else's fault. Corollary to this, non-apologies. They'll never admit they were in the wrong, and that they are sorry for doing something wrong. Just reframe it to make it seem like it's just how you are choosing to perceive it. They will always say I'm sorry you feel that way, but trying to control you might start as something simple as telling you what to do, and getting upset that you didn't do it exactly like what they wanted, making you feel bad or sad for not spending time with them, or spending time with friends or family away from them, always being suspicious of where you've been or who you've been with, teasing or play fighting but then saying it was all a joke and you shouldn't be so serious all the time. Same as saying something hurtful but after your reaction claiming they were only teasing or it was a joke and telling you to relax or chill out. This is gaslighting. They are playing with your emotions and seeing how you react. If you constantly have only ups or downs with them and never just calm and peace, roller coaster of emotions, you will feel exhausted. Look into books about narcissism and emotional abuse. Very helpful, and you might see similarities. From someone who was with an abusive partner for way too long, it's not very easy to spot until you are all in, and then you tend to ignore their behavior because it seems normal. It starts with making you feel like you're the only one who can help them, and if you don't they're going to get hurt without your constant protection. Little things like having an emotional breakdown because you didn't respond to their endless stream of texts right away even though you're busy at work. The constant need for reassurance is the precursor to emotional manipulation. They're planting the seeds of deception sugar-coated as you being their hero. The only thing that keeps them going and keeps them safe. After they're sure that you've fallen for it, then their true colors start to come out. To quote BoJack Horseman, when you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. When they block you then get mad because you didn't call them. Sounds bit stupid in it? When they call your interest stupid and not worth their time and you should change it. Trying to separate you from your friends. They're afraid your friends will point out their bulls, so they want to disconnect you from that system so all you have is your partner. They don't respect your personal space. They don't respect the fact that you are still an individual and that you have your own life. They try to control your relationships or try to get in between. Problems in the relationship are happening because of you. They try to manipulate or blackmail you to do something that you don't want to. They have a toxic relationship with their parents, relatives or friends. They will most likely have a similar relationship with your parents, relatives or friends too. Know your partner well and check closely for any negative signs. If you notice them, talk about them. If they refuse to talk or belittle them, end the relationship immediately. Love bombing. When they treat you well at first, give you all their attention, basically act like the perfect partner, keyword, act, then they slowly test how well you react, them regressing into their true selves, and the whole time you're thinking they will go back to normal. They never will. Instead things get worse and worse. Serious red flag. Sleep deprivation. They refuse to discuss disagreements in the moment, favoring to wake you up from your sleep to discuss instead. or they keep you up all goddamn night arguing with you. Male survivor from an abusive relationship here. Started off as love bombing, being made to feel like Superman. You're the most incredible person in the world. This feeling is then pulled under your feet in any argument and used as a tool to control you. You grow to depend on how good they make you feel when they're grooming you. Gaslighting starts when they downplay or undermine anything you say, be it experience, memory, feelings, events that just happened, etc., or simply never even acknowledging something happened. You doubt your own sanity in events that happened in the same day. You remember it one way but she insists it happened this way. It reached a point I wished she would just physically hit me so I wasn't so confused whether it was abuse or not. You get me? Whenever called out or confronted, shifted back to a victim complex of how it's never their fault. It's always someone else's fault. Just overall very exhausting. The 1st of May 2010 would not recommend. The 2nd of May 2010 with Rice. In my own experience, nothing is ever their fault. Their wrongs are always less severe than yours. My ex was notoriously late for everything but the few times I was it turned into massive arguments. They also stack up the things you've done wrong to use as a weapon against you later on. Constantly berating your friends' family trying to isolate you from them and also berating your hobbies interests. He would always go on long rants about how all the games I liked sucked and that my interests were lame and boring and that he'd never partake. He would always go be with his friends without telling me, but if I did the same suddenly it was a problem. He was hurt that I chose them over him and had to stay home with him. He didn't actually want my time but would go do his own thing in another room. He just wanted to control where I was. Alright, let me write you a list. Love bombing. Texting you every hour of every day, making you feel so special and wanting to spend every moment with you. A well-adjusted person will have their own things going on, and though they may want to see you, they don't drop everything to spend time with you 24/7. Nothing is ever their fault. This can show in being picked on at work, how terrible their ex was, always having an excuse I had a bad day, and you made it worse. Trauma bonding, poor relationship or no relationship with family, making you feel like you're broken or fricked up, ignoring boundaries, making promises that are not feasible. I'll make sure no one hurts you again becomes awful and ironic later on, when they're the one hurting you, throwing things, hitting things near you. Now, this list is not exhaustive, and there can be valid reasons for things like not talking to family, but read over it and think about it. If you find yourself going my best advice is run. My second best advice is talk to a loved one who you knew before you're so. Bonus if they haven't met them, so your auntie, your best friend, your grandfather, for example. People who have your best interest at heart and don't have a vested interest in keeping your partner happy. For the friend group, lay out what's concerning you and make a plan to remove yourself from the situation. You cannot fix or help an abuser. Your best bet is to get far away, as quickly and safely as possible. Unnecessarily escalating the stakes of minor disagreements. That is, using threats to end the relationship to get their way, turning a difference of opinion into a referendum on your partnership, being bad at arguing, using any disagreement as an opportunity to say intensely hurtful things. When you can't tell your friends and family what's going on behind closed doors cause they'll hate them even more than they already do. If you feel like you have to put your own interests on the back burner in favor of theirs. If you feel guilty for doing something harmless and innocent that you normally like to do, just because you're afraid that they won't approve of it. If you offend them, it's your fault because you're an butthole. But if they offend you, it's also your fault because you're sensitive. They start making plans without you. This is our favorite song. Or when, not if, we get married without your input. It can be super subtle, but it's something my abusive exes all had in common. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.